Luckily for us, we have the power to change our beliefs, and in doing so, we can change our experience and get closer to living a good life. And this is our responsibility. Welcome to Orion Philosophy, where we explore, discuss, and dissect areas of practical philosophy for use in everyday life. Truth is not what you want it to be. It is what it is, and you must bend to its power or live a lie. Stories are interesting things. All of us gently warp reality with our different perspectives, beliefs, and opinions, and these don't always reflect the true nature of the things we see. This warping can influence the way we perceive who we are, how we perceive other people, and how we perceive the very world around us. Sometimes the formation of these stories is completely subconscious. They can simply be the result of your unconscious beliefs, values, and experiences. However, other times they can be far more conscious, and they can be far more deliberate decisions. Stories we tell ourselves specifically manufactured to warp the truth and to avoid hard realities that we would rather not accept. Regardless of the form our stories take, they have the potential to either be a source of support, positivity, and motivation, or a source of negativity, limitation, and suffering. For our own well-being, it's important that our stories work for us rather than against us. To make sure this is the case, we first need awareness of our stories, and then we need to develop understanding of how they came to be. How do stories cause suffering? When applied to our own lives, they often create a distance between us and the truth. The further the distance between reality and the stories we tell ourselves, the higher the risk that our stories will cause us suffering if we're snapped back to reality. And this suffering tends to raise its head when we get into a situation in which reality conflicts with the stories we tell ourselves. Perhaps someone does something that conflicts with your story of who they should be. Or maybe the world itself doesn't align with how you think it should behave. Very simply put, stories form expectations. And when expectations are not met, they cause resistance and suffering. Later on, we'll discuss how some stories can help us view the world more positively, and how others can risk causing us unnecessary suffering. We'll also discuss what tools we can use to identify stories in the world around us, and specifically stories that we might not be aware of in our own minds in the form of values and beliefs. Building an awareness of the benefits and risks of stories, we can then understand how to use them to our advantage as a tool for living a good life. This awareness will also help make you catch stories and beliefs before they root themselves in the mind and lead us to suffer unconsciously. Towards the end, we'll go through the risks associated with stories. And to finish, I'll outline some things you can do to practically help use stories to your advantage, rather than allow them to seep into your beliefs, values, and character without you knowing, where they risk being detrimental to our well-being, like weeds in a garden. The author of Sapiens and Homo Deus, Yuval Noah Harari, describes this concept as having stories serve us, rather than us serving them. To begin, I think it's important to say that stories have been one of the greatest tools available to our species. Our collective ability to share and listen to stories has allowed us to become the most powerful animal on the planet. As humans, we don't have large claws, we don't have rows of sharp teeth. We're not particularly strong or resilient compared to other creatures, but we do, however, possess extraordinary minds. The human brain has given us the capacity for complex storytelling, and through these stories, we can do what no other animal can do: exchange large amounts of information quickly and efficiently. Stories have not only given us the ability to share large quantities of information, they have also allowed us to bring one another together under collective and agreed beliefs, values, and goals. Our stories can rally us to a cause by speaking directly to our values and our needs. They have the power to spread brotherhood, violence, joy, fear, or peace. This human ability to communicate has meant that hundreds, thousands, and millions of humans are able to work together collaboratively, achieving far more than was previously possible in our early history. A history of fragmented social groups, warring tribes, and individual countries with differing beliefs, values, and cultures. However, there is a darker side to our storytelling. Stories can also be very destructive. Our bloodiest past paints a stark picture of how differing beliefs and differing cultural narratives can cause misunderstanding, intolerance, and violence. These days, conflict between different groups of people is caused more by the stories we grow up in than anything else. Stories create culture, culture creates belief, and belief influences behavior. With all this in mind, we can structure the context of stories as two sides of the same coin. Firstly, we know that stories have helped bind us in collaborative social groups. They have increased our number from mere hundreds to millions. and in doing so we have multiplied our ability to solve problems, develop solutions, and progress as a species. On the other side of the same coin, stories are responsible for our differences. Every one of us walks a unique journey through life, and as we do, we pick up different lessons and experiences along the way. Our uniqueness results in the differing beliefs, values, and opinions caused by these experiences. And as individuals, this variation can create anything from a Tibetan monk to the member of a drug cartel. And as a culture, it can create anything from a safe, wealthy, and prosperous community to violent criminal cities and war-torn dictatorships. At this point, I'll outline the definition I'm using for story to provide some context for the ideas and the examples that we'll be exploring in the next section. In its simplest form, a story here is something that we can identify easily for ourselves by asking the following question. If humans did not exist, would this thing exist? If the answer is no, then it's very likely you're thinking of a story, a creation of mankind. For example, trees will exist in the absence of humanity. Magnetism will exist in the absence of humanity. Gravity, electrochemistry, thermodynamics, Newton's laws, the conservation of momentum, and photosynthesis will all exist. They wouldn't necessarily have names, but the principles would exist out in nature. These are the things that exist outside human thought. Things that we observe, not things we create. However, capitalism, democracy, communism, the stock market, Christianity, monotheism, polytheism, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and even philosophy would not exist. These are products of humanity, seeds of the human mind. These are examples of stories because they would not exist if humanity had not created them. This distinction can also go some way to explain why more and more people are becoming atheist or agnostic, while at the same time religion is in decline, because as our science develops and we begin to answer more questions through observation, we remove the need for our stories to explain the world around us. That being said, stories are not bad things, and in many cases they are absolutely necessary. As we've mentioned, stories have historically allowed us to work together, bind us in common pursuits, and work towards creating the quality of life that we enjoy today. I'll add further structure to the concept of stories by dividing them into two groups: stories of the individual and stories of the culture. Starting with stories of the individual, each and every one of us holds within our brain a library of information, a collection of lessons, observations, and experiences that have formed our beliefs, our thoughts, and our values. Some of this will be made up of facts and observation, and some of it will be assumptions, generalizations, ideas held only on faith, or ideas held because of the trust we have in what people have told us. And not all of it is necessarily true or beneficial to our own well-being. As an individual, our beliefs are often personal and deeply private. Some of us will make a conscious effort with our personal development, and as a result we have a number of beliefs that we have chosen intentionally to improve how we live. Others of us go through life mostly unconsciously, adopting beliefs from the world around us without doing much to question whether they're valid or not. Whatever path we choose to take, we will all have a varying number of conscious and unconscious beliefs, a complex soup of ideas, thoughts, and perspectives. In isolation, one of these beliefs can be relatively straightforward. With a little meditation, reflection, and effort, we can become aware of it, and then we can examine it. We can decide whether it's realistic, and we can decide whether it's beneficial, or whether it's false and destructive. We can then try and understand the cause of the belief, and then we can question it, we can challenge it, and attempt to reframe it to improve our well-being. This activity can be thought of like fixing a bug in a computer program if our mind was running software. However, in reality, it's really not that easy. We are not just made up of single beliefs. Our character is a complex mixture of hundreds or even thousands of interwoven beliefs, interwoven thoughts, assumptions, biases, and lessons. This complexity makes any observation or analysis difficult to outline and articulate, because everything is dependent on each other and it's all mixed together like interwoven spaghetti. But if we want to improve the quality of our life, we need to try to navigate this complexity and examine the conditions of our mind. Many of our common beliefs are stories. They wouldn't exist if humanity had not created them. Some are more widespread than others, and they come in the form of pre-existing frameworks, like Stoic philosophy, ideology, religion, cults, superstitions, or concepts like destiny, fate, karma, and spirituality. Some beliefs are more personal and unique. These are things like, how do we define success? What does happiness look like for us? How do I view myself? How do I view others? How do I view the world around me? And as tools for living a good life, self-examination, visualization, and philosophy can be very powerful. They challenge us to question ourselves. They help us develop awareness of the nature of our mind, the form of our character, and provide a compass for its direction based on what we believe is right and true. Marcus Aurelius once said the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, men are not disturbed by things, but the view they have of them. Both ancient Stoics picked up on a common theme here. Our mind dictates how we live. Just as the lens of a camera dictates the quality of the picture, a dirty lens will produce a poor image, and a mind of negative and limiting beliefs will produce a life of suffering. Therefore, the beliefs we have and the stories we hold will directly affect how we live. Luckily for us, we have the power to change our beliefs, and in doing so, we can change our experience and get closer to living a good life. And this is our responsibility. Let's take a look at self-examination. While using stories and beliefs to our advantage can be a powerful tool for living a good and happy life, as we've said, they can just as easily create suffering, hatred, jealousy, anxiety, and depression if we let them fester unexamined. It's our individual responsibility to examine our beliefs and make sure that they are serving us rather than hindering us. This can take time and a fair amount of effort, and even when we have developed an awareness to see our thoughts more clearly, some of our beliefs and stories may be very deeply rooted or hiding under layers of experience and pain. It is extremely likely that many, if not all of us, have some deeply rooted beliefs that are causing us some sort of suffering in our lives. Beliefs that have been picked up unconsciously as we've grown up and moved through the world. It is up to us to find them, to question them, to change them, like cleaning the lens of the camera. Examples of these limiting beliefs can include ideas like the expectation that life should always be fair. It could also include more popular ideas like the law of attraction, which promises the practitioner that if they hold in their mind a vision of the future, you will send ripples through the world and the universe that will listen and rearrange itself based on this vision to make it come true. Things like this seem like a very childish expectation of the world, and to me it's always seemed more than a little arrogant to think that there is a conscious universe that will rearrange itself based on your individual belief. It also creates a narrative whereby we rely on the universe to provide for us, rather than taking ownership and responsibility for our own well-being. For me, a more mature expectation would be that the universe is indifferent to us, in the same way that the ocean is indifferent to the fish it contains. It is therefore up to us to earn the lives we want and accept life as it comes. As a final thought before we move on to the next subject, it's not possible for us to know the intricate details and workings of everything around us. We inevitably have to fill the gaps in our understanding with assumptions, estimations, and details of our own. For example, when we have an interaction with someone, we can't know them completely, so we build an estimation of who they are. In this way, much of our life is influenced by our beliefs, because it is our beliefs that flavor these assumptions. Moving on to cultural stories, we as humans like to bind into groups, and there is a certain amount of tribalism in human nature. When enough people agree on the same story, it begins to form a part of our culture. Collective cultural stories are those that draw people together, for better or for worse. At their best, they allow us to flourish, improve equality, develop technology and medicine, provide healthcare and education. They allow us to progress at an accelerated pace compared to what is otherwise possible in smaller social groups. And in doing so, we improve our quality of life as we work towards common goals, and we share our resources for the benefit of the group. It's also worth mentioning that similar to the individual, not all cultural stories benefit us. There are cultural stories that bring people together to work towards destructive outcomes, ones that cause large amounts of suffering. We've seen examples of this in past holy wars, genocide, discrimination, and slavery, for example. And it's important to consider the impact of such damaging stories and narratives. In doing so, we can develop an awareness of how much suffering can be caused by bad stories, and we are then better able to avoid them, rather than allowing them to slip by into our minds and our culture, where they can root themselves and begin to allow history to repeat itself. Every day we come into multiple stories of culture. Whenever we buy something, we are participating in the story of money. With money, we have culturally agreed that some piece of paper, or a coin, or a number on a screen has some value. Without the agreed upon story of money, this little piece of paper is worth very little. This story of money has allowed economies to grow far beyond what they would be if we were still trading in labor and goods. For example, it's much easier for me to go and buy a new pair of shoes with my money then it would be for me to agree with the shoemaker how much milk from my cows he would like for his nice new pair of trainers. Most of us have also agreed on the story of being a participating citizen of a nation. We pay our taxes so that the education system is available for our young people. Healthcare can take care of our sick. Roads can facilitate our travel. And our police force can reduce crime. We also come into contact with smaller stories as well. Whenever we play poker or a board game, we're agreeing upon the rules of the game. If we start to trade stocks, we are participating in the story of the stock market. And if we go to pray, we are buying into the stories of religion. And in other more direct ways, stories are also used by media distributors to make us think certain ways, to romanticize worldviews, or demonize groups or cultures. Advertisers have us believe stories to sell us products. Perfume adverts show romance and mystery. Fast food adverts show us images of happy families, sitting around tables sharing a meal with smiling faces. Pharmaceuticals show us people bright-faced, healthy, and full of energy. These types of stories are used to sell us products by showing us what our lives could be if we bought the product or service. Of course, the stories are rarely honest or accurate, but as advertisers know, people spend more money as a result of emotion than logic. So given all of this information, what can we do with it to live better lives? To begin with, we need to develop awareness. We can't use the stories and beliefs to our advantage until we are first aware of what they are and why we believe in them. This awareness is most easily developed through meditation. Or if you're really struggling with something, it's most easily developed through seeing a mental health professional. This content is not designed to be a replacement for that. Essentially, we have to sit and observe our thoughts and our feelings. In doing so over time, we become familiar with the patterns of our mind, and we begin to see the underlying beliefs, expectations, and stories that are responsible for our thoughts, actions, and reactions. After awareness, we can then start to question and challenge. Before being sentenced to death, Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. And through examination, we can challenge and question our beliefs. We can ask questions about whether they are constructive, such as things like there is plenty of opportunity in the world. People are mostly good, we're all just trying to do our best. We're living in the best time in human history. I will make the best use of what's within my power, and I'll accept the rest as it comes. Or are they destructive? Such as people are idiots, selfish and mean. I can control other people. People should respect me. Life is terrible, there is no opportunity. I'm so unlucky, the world has it in for me. Or the earth is flat. Some other things that we can do is make an effort to be aware of the differences between stories and reality. And day to day, we can try and understand the purpose of the stories around us. Is it there to sell you something? Is it there to make you vote a certain way? Or are the stories we're telling ourselves only there to validate our bad behavior and stop us from taking accountability for what we're doing? Even our own expectations can come in the form of stories. They can be about what we expect from the world, what we expect from other people, and what we expect from ourselves. I really believe it's worth spending time to understand our expectations, because if they are unrealistic, they could be setting you up to get frustrated, jealous, angry, and upset. Because events don't happen as we want them to. They just happen as they do.